Welcome to the Success in Africa podcast with Dr. Modupe, your weekly dose of leadership vitamins to make you successful in Africa.
Hello and welcome to the Success in Africa podcast, episode 12. My name is Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce, and I am a scholar and practitioner of leadership and organizational development. Simply put, I study what makes people successful. I have been studying this for 3 decades with a particular focus on people in Africa. And in this podcast, I will share stories, lessons, and insights about people having success in Africa. Why this podcast? Because I am sick and tired of Africa being the poorest continent in the world. We are blessed with the greatest resource, young people. Africa will soon have the largest number of working age people in the world. And when these people achieve success, watch out, Africa's wealth will be unparalleled. Why? Because I don't know of too many Africans whose goal in life it is to die poor. You see, success in life is simply the achievement of a predetermined goal. Whether that goal is creating employment for 10,000 people or transforming your country into a high-income country, this podcast has been created to help you to achieve it. So, if you are serious about achieving success in Africa, I want you to subscribe to this channel. If you like this video after you have watched it, please click the like button. This podcast is brought to you courtesy of BCA Leadership, the largest leadership enhancement company in Africa. If you have questions that you want me to answer after watching this video, log on to BCA Online. The link is on the screen, and post your questions there. That is where I will respond to all of your questions. Today we have the fourth in our 4-episode series on examining success tips for leadership in public sector. For our success tip today, the key phrase is this: know your why. Know your why and never forget it. I first met Claire Akamanzi in 2016 when she was the CEO of the Rwanda Development Board, and I served as the founding dean of the African Leadership University School of Business. She was a significant supporter of placing our Pan-African hybrid MBA program in Rwanda, as she viewed our work and mission as aligned with her mission of making Rwanda a preferred destination for Pan-African and global investment. At a cocktail event, while making some small talk, I congratulated her for the fact that Rwanda was, at number 46, the second highest ranked African country in the global ease of doing business rankings that was prepared annually by the World Bank Group. I was expecting her to bask in the glow of my congratulations, but her reaction caught me by surprise. She said she was worried about the ranking because it was simply not good enough, based on the targets and resources that had been placed at her disposal by President Paul Kagame. She informed me that almost a decade ago, when Rwanda was ranked at 150 in the ease of doing business rankings, President Kagame had tasked her to study the top 10 ranked countries to understand what made these countries easy to do business in order to brief him on it, so on how to get Rwanda to that top 10 in the world. She did, and she made her reports to the president, including the recommendations and what needed to be done. And then he placed her in charge and gave her the authority and the resources to make it happen. Knowing the immense trust that her boss had placed on her to bring this achievement to fruition, and the disciplined manner in which her boss follows up on assignments and holds all of his direct reports accountable regardless of their age, gender, familial relationship, or ethnicity, she was worried that being ranked at number 46 was simply not good enough, and she had to do better. Her reaction told me everything I needed to know about the state of leadership and public service in Rwanda at the time. It is little surprise to me that since that year, Rwanda continued to climb up the ladder of performance in the ease of doing business rankings. And in 2019, the last year before the COVID pandemic made these rankings somewhat moot, Rwanda rose to be ranked number 29 in the world. Much of the credit for that improvement goes to Claire Akamanzi, a Ugandan-born Rwandan who was given the opportunity and the resources to be successful in Rwanda. By contrast, Uganda, the country of her birth, and where she spent the early years of her life and went to school, was ranked number 127 in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business rankings in the same 2019. You see, Claire Akamanzi was born in she was born in Uganda to Rwandan refugee parents. She attended pre-university education in Uganda and achieved her bachelor's degree at Makerere University in Uganda. She describes her childhood in Uganda as an extended period of having an identity crisis. Why? Because she was the child of Rwandan refugees in Uganda. You see, and you see, her parents discouraged Claire and her siblings from saying who they really were for fear of discrimination. When she was a student aspiring for student leadership positions in Uganda, she would sometimes be rejected even when she was the lone candidate because she is a Rwandan. Those early experiences helped her to realize the importance of identity and belonging, and how leadership has a role in providing the right environment for people to thrive. It gave her the passion to return to Rwanda and become part of the building of a country where all belonged and could aspire to greatness. She credits President Kagame for giving her and other people like her an opportunity to take up positions of responsibility and leadership. And she testifies that with President Kagame, all you have to show is competence, character, and results. When you deliver the results, he does not care whether you are young or old, tall or short, male or female. He is only concerned about whether you deliver on your promises. By contrast, President Museveni of Uganda has appointed people to positions of authority in Uganda and kept them in those positions based on their ethnicity, their gender, their age, and he has ignored issues of competence, of character, and of results. Corruption in Uganda is characterized by grand-scale theft of public funds and petty corruption involving public officials at all levels of society, as well as widespread political patronage systems. The president and his party elite maintain power and prestige through a patronage system that is partially supported by foreign aid, which provides the government with large amounts of resources that contribute to corrupt practices going on within the country. You see, this aid reduces the incentive to make Uganda a desirable place to do business in, as there is less of an incentive to put the most competent people in positions of authority, because whatever funds are not generated through business and taxation are usually provided by foreign donors. Imagine what Uganda might have looked like in 2019 if Claire Akamanzi had been given the opportunity to exercise her gift of public servant leadership in the country of her birth and upbringing, that is Uganda, instead of the country of her grandparents, that is Rwanda. Imagine how different the life expectancy and economic fortunes of a child born in Uganda today would have been if this had happened. Claire Akamanzi emulated the example of her boss, that is President Kagame, by working hard, staying humble, learning from other countries, exercising self-discipline, hiring and firing based on competence, character, and results delivery, and never forgetting her why. You see, she understood that the reason why she was in the position that she was in was to serve the people and not herself. She understood, and she never forget, that her first duty was to every unborn child whose future and prosperity would be impacted by the decisions she made. She understood that the type of discrimination that she endured while living as a child of refugees, being denied access to positions of leadership and authority despite her obvious qualification, was something that she did not want any other children to be subjected to. Because she never forgot her why, she was guided to take optimal decisions that have resulted in Rwanda being transformed from a flyover country that nobody mentions in positive conversation to a country that is now #1 destination in Africa for meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions, beating out larger and more established African countries like Kenya and South Africa. You see, folks, knowing your why means knowing your purpose. Before you enter into public service, check yourself. In the same way that a budding entrepreneur has to check himself or herself to determine whether he has the requisite amount of craziness for the journey, a potential public servant should check herself or himself for purpose. Why are you looking to go into public service? Is it simply to earn a living? Frankly, that's not enough. If it is to enrich yourself, then you're definitely not going to be very successful. Or you may get some money for a short time, but eventually you will be broke, or you will spend a lifetime trying to hide your money from the legitimate owners who you stole it from and thus be miserable. You see, to serve the public, it requires you to have a purpose that is bigger than you, more significant than your personal wealth, and frankly, more important than your own life. When you know your why and you can share it with others, ensure that you never forget it. You see, Claire Akamanzi knew her why, and that's why Rwanda's economic development is the success story that it has been. And today, Rwanda is studied by many scholars. Today, Claire has left the Rwandan government to serve as the CEO of NBA Africa. She has delivered on her purpose in public service and is now ready for a bigger Pan-African stage. Just as Rwanda is better today because of her service in the last 10 years, Africa will be better in the next 10 years because of her service. Thank you, Claire. This brings us to the end of our podcast today and the end of our first series on success in public service in Africa. I look forward to reading your comments and feedback about this podcast. Next week, I will do a special podcast in which I will answer some of the questions that you have asked me over the past 3 months. Amazing, it's been 3 months already. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. After that episode, we will start a new series on entrepreneurship, achieving success in Africa in the business sector. After that 4-part series, we will then examine success in Africa in the non-profit sector. So stay tuned for future episodes. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. Tell your friends about it. Together, we can transform our beloved continent. See you next week.
Tomorrow, belongs to those people who prepare for it today. See you next week.